I dug up my grave. I was killed by my best friend, but my parents recognized her as their goddaughter. Her boyfriend is also about to marry her. I've got to do something to make these idiots find out that I was wronged. In the middle of the night, deep in the mountains and old forests, a hammer, 2 hammers, 3. Oh, what a king and a lamb hit me. I straightened up in anger and lowered the sledgehammer in my hand. No, I've become a ghost. Why can something hit me? When I turned around, I saw an extremely handsome man sitting on the tombstone in the back row. With a fair and thin face, a tall nose bridge, and a pair of slightly raised phoenix eyes, he stared obliquely, and he was indescribably amorous. I erupted in a scream and rushed up to grab his legs. Cur Jacob! You're Cur Jacob! I couldn't see it when I was alive, but when I died, I saw the idol I had been a fan of for 10 years. Oops, it's too late to die. Cur Jacob pushed me away in disgust, his thick eyebrows furrowed with the word, Chuan. You're a fan of me. My fans can't be so unqualified. I looked at him aggrievedly. Why am I not qualified? The dead are respected, and when people are dead, you still steam your anger on people's graves, and it's too desperate to do things, right? I looked at the intact tombstones, and I couldn't smash my own grave. This is my own grave. It doesn't work if you have a grudge. People die like a lamp goes out. The voice of reprimand stopped abruptly. What did you say? This is the 3rd year that I have died. I'm stupid. I traveled to Thailand with my best friend Cornelia Hood, and stayed in a family hotel. At night, there was a burglary, and Cornelia Hood just opened the door to go to the bathroom, and the thief was interested in her. I heard the commotion and ran out to rescue her, and while I was scuffling with the thief, Cornelia Hood ran into her bedroom and locked the door. The thief brought a knife, and I was stabbed to death by him like that, and the thief ran away. It was a relatively remote island, with few residents on the island, and there were few street lights, let alone surveillance, so the police never caught the murderer. Cornelia Hood reversed black and white afterwards, said I was caught by a thief when I went to the bathroom, and it was too late, when she heard the movement and came out. Uncle and Aunt, I'm sorry, I've been desperately trying to save Vanessa Buckle, but it's still too late. Why am I so useless? Why wasn't I the one who died? My parents were still there comforting her. Don't blame you, kid, we know you've done your best. I was floating on the side, so angry that I almost lost my soul, and died a 2nd time. So you're going to dig your own grave? I crouched to the side in frustration, drawing circles on the ground with my fingers. Yesterday was my birthday, and my boyfriend came to my grave, and said he was going to marry Cornelia Hood next month. My brother also came to my grave, and said that Sister Cornelia Hood was getting married, and my parents were going to send her a car as a dowry, and in the years since I died, fortunately, she often came to visit my parents, comforted them, and accompanied them. I can't do anything. I can't even get out of this cemetery. The most hateful thing is that this cemetery was chosen for me by Cornelia Hood, saying that I said before I was alive that I liked the place with a good view. The scenery of this place is good, that is, it is far away from the city, and the mountain road has 18 bends, which is very difficult to open. My family went back and forth once, and it took 4 hours. So now my parents are slowly coming to see me less. Only during Qingming, Death Day, and winter solstice will come to burn a piece of paper, and usually don't come. My family is very superstitious, and I am thinking of making some noise on the grave, and the cemetery keeper here will definitely inform them, and they may find something. Cur Jacob looked at me sympathetically, along with the sledgehammer in my hand. Where did you get this hammer? I said to the tomb next door. The uncle next door borrowed me. He was a knocker on the wall when he was alive, and his son burned a hammer for him, saying that if he couldn't find a job to do in the underworld, he could still do his old job. Being a ghost is completely different from what I imagine. I can't dream, I can't get out of my own cemetery. I can't touch anything in the world, flowers and trees, let alone living people. The living people in our eyes are covered with a thin layer of flame, and if I try to touch them, I will be burned to ashes first, and my soul will be scattered. So I can only do it in a hurry, but I can't do anything. I watched as Cornelia Hood took advantage of the situation, and snatched everything that belonged to me. My boyfriend fell in love with her, my parents recognized her as a goddaughter, and my brother treated her like half an older sister. I couldn't help but cry out loud. This feeling of powerlessness has tormented me for almost 3 years. Don't cry. Kerr Jacob stroked the top of my head, and rubbed my head like a puppy. I still couldn't stop crying and started hiccups. Kerr Jacob sighed deeply, pressed my head, and twisted my head 90 degrees to the left to face my tombstone. My fans, you can't just let people bully. As soon as I finished speaking, my tombstone cracked. I jumped up like a monkey. I saw a huge crack in my tombstone in the middle, as if it had been split in half by an axe. Idol. You deserve to be my idol. Let's discuss. Can you crack the word wronged on it? It's the kind of Chinese characters that are put together with cracks. Kerr Jacob rolled his eyes. Why can anyone be so handsome even with a roll of their eyes? You can't be a trickster for me. No, I remember that your graveyard is in the south of the city. How can you come here? It was only when I came back to my senses that I realized something was wrong. After death, ordinary ghosts can only move within 100 meters of their own grave, just like a transparent glass cover covers us. No matter how hard you try, you can't get out of that barrier. Kerr Jacob has been my idol for many years, and I've loved him since junior high school. In my junior year of high school, Kerr Jacob was on a variety show when he was crushed to death by a huge screen that fell overhead. Kerr Jacob is from our city, and I've been to his memorial service and have secretly run to incense him. His grave is far away from us, basically across the entire city of Hangzhou. Kerr Jacob's eyebrows softened, and he pulled a book out of his arms and shook it in front of me. Well, thanks to one of my fans, she burned me a copy of Ghost Immortal Cultivation Dafa. I'm idle and bored, so I practice according to the above exercises, and as I practice, I can come and go freely, and I can touch other things, and now I even have some mana. I have avenged and repaid my kindness, and I can often go to see my parents, which can be regarded as a ghost without regrets. I was shocked. How could there be such a thing? How could it be such a coincidence? Look at the title page of the book. Does it say, "To my favorite Kerr Jacob, your cutest fan, Vanessa Buckle"? It's me, Kerr Jacob. I gave you this book. I stood up excitedly, holding Kerr Jacob's hand and jumping. I was obsessed with Cixia novels in high school, and when I learned about Kerr Jacob's death, I couldn't accept it, so I secretly bought a book on the internet and burned it for him. I didn't expect to really be able to help Kerr Jacob. It's so good. Kerr Jacob stared at me, with a look of surprise on his face, and I pulled him to my tombstone, and pointed to the words on the tombstone and said to him, "Look, Vanessa Buckle, it's really me." The body fell into a warm embrace. This is the first time I have felt a person's body temperature in my 3 years of being a ghost. It's like a cold winter, lying in the bed after a day of exposure, full of the smell of sunshine. I've met other ghosts, cold, damp, like a clump of freshly fished weeds. Is worthy of being my idol, and he has done an extraordinary job of doing ghosts. Vanessa Buckle, thank you. Kerr Jacob gave me a big hug, and handed me the book in his hand. Your revenge, brother will help you avenge it. I covered my mouth and cried excitedly. The next morning, when the cemetery staff made their usual rounds of inspections, they were stupefied by the tragic situation of my grave. In order to enhance the effect, Kerr Jacob also went to the mountains last night to pick a lot of flowers, and used the juice of the flowers to write a big word injustice on my tombstone. The blood-red word, injustice, the cracked tombstones, and all kinds of insects crawling on the grave almost didn't scare the little fat man. Idle, aren't these bugs a little too exaggerated? My hairs are going to stand on end. Jacob snapped me in the head. The more exaggerated, the better. The little fat man on patrol was frightened and went crazy, found the phone book and called the people above frantically. 2 hours later, my mom and dad came, my brother came, my boyfriend came, and so did Cornelia Hood. Seeing the horror of my grave, Cornelia Hood collapsed to the ground in fright. Someone's prank. Who is it? Not even letting Vanessa Buckle die. What's the matter? You're coming at me. Why are you bullying Vanessa Buckle? Vanessa Buckle, my heart really hurts, Tilda. Cornelia Hood reacted and hugged my boyfriend, Douglas Felton, and cried. Oh no, it's supposed to be her boyfriend now. My brother's face was pale, and his eyes were red, and after a while he seemed to think of something and began to circle around him frantically. Sister! Sister, is it you? You come out for me? Did you come back to see us? My dad and my mom were holding each other, their lips trembling, their faces full of tears, and they couldn't say a word. I looked at my once closest family members, and the thought of rushing over to hug them overwhelmed everything. Mom and Dad, I'm sorry for you, for making you have to go through the pain of a white-haired person sending a black-haired person. It is because I don't know people clearly, and I have harmed myself and you. Just as I was about to touch my mom's arm, Jacob grabbed me. Vanessa Buckle, calm down. Douglas Felton crouched down and put his trembling hand on the picture on my tombstone. Vanessa Buckle, is it that I'm going to marry Cornelia Hood, upsetting you? Don't you want us to get married? In the photo, 2 lines of bloody tears flowed from my eyes. Douglas Felton, who had been affectionate just a moment ago, let out a terrible scream, and then fell backwards on all fours, and before anyone could help him, he got up and hid behind my brother. My brother shook him off vigorously, and rushed forward to hug my tombstone. Sister, is that you? Why didn't you come to see us? Do you know how much we miss you? My parents also jumped up, touched my picture, and began to cry. Nan, do you have any grievances? You tell your parents, you ruthless girl, you have been gone for so many years, and you don't even give us a dream, Tilda. Douglas Felton was shivering with the Cornelia Hood, and my parents and brother were hugging my headstone and crying. There was chaos at the scene, and I stood aside, jumping to my feet in a hurry. Brother Jacob, what are we going to do now? Jacob spreads his hands and strikes a very handsome pose. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly dispersed, and a large area of sunlight sprinkled down, enveloping the cemetery in golden light. Vanessa Buckle, run! Jacob pulled me into the locust tree behind the tombstone, and the 2 of us hid in the shade, and breathed a sigh of relief. Ghosts can't touch the sun, especially the midday sun, which is so strong that it can burn and incinerate us. You can come and go as you please, or can't you bask in the sun? Jacob nodded. I can only come out after 4 p.m. now, and I won't be as dusty as you are if I get sunburned, but I will be very badly injured. The cemetery was quiet for now. My parents were still sobbing quietly, and Cornelia Hood and Douglas Felton were comforting. Uncle and Aunt, I really want to meet Vanessa Buckle, but let's believe in science. This is someone who is taking Vanessa Buckle's tomb to cheat money, and it will not be peaceful for Vanessa Buckle to die. We must find out this bad guy, and we can't let Vanessa Buckle die and be bullied. My parents obviously hesitated, although superstitious, but this kind of thing is too mysterious. They are also worried about whether this is another hoax. My family is in good condition. There are 7 or 8 houses alone, as well as factories and some shops. When I first died, many folk magicians came to me with the offer to let my family see me, but it turned out that they were all liars. My brother didn't know what came to mind, so he rushed to the cemetery guard, and after a while ran over with 3 sticks of incense in his hand. Against the sun, he ran sweaty, with trembling hands. He put incense into the censer in front of my tombstone, and kept saying, Sister, if you can see us, you can send a message. I know it's you. It must be you. The incense burned, and there was a nice smell of sandalwood, and I was a little hungry. Jacob stretched out his hand, and the 3 sticks of incense snapped in unison, as if they had been slashed by a knife. My brother was stunned for a moment, then rushed to the guard room, and picked up a large bundle of incense. He pointed. Jacob hacked. In a few moments, there was a fine incense scattered in front of my tombstone. I tugged at Jacob's sleeve. Idle, can't we just show up? Jacob shook his head. People and ghosts have different paths. If you want to show up, you must at least follow the methods in that book, and devote yourself to cultivation for a year. I can't show up during the day, and it's your enmity. I'm too involved to be bad for both of us, so I can only help you on the side. Hey, the road to revenge is long and obstructive. My brother staggered to his feet, and said firmly to my parents, my sister must have had an accident. She has something she wants to say to us, but can't say it. We can't let her do it alone. Let's go back and find someone to find a way. Boy. I looked at him happily, and wanted to touch his head as I had done in the past. My silly brother grows up and will use his brain. The group cleaned up my graveyard, where my parents contacted me, and ordered a new tombstone to be reinstalled in a few days. Cornelia Hood stood on the sidelines, silent, her eyes dark, obscure, finally waiting for the evening. Jacob pulled me straight to the barrier of the cemetery. He floated out without a hitch, leaving me stuck to the barrier, dead or alive. He pushed and pulled unwillingly, and found that I couldn't get out of anything. The 2 of us squatted on the ground and sighed together. What is the end of the world? This is it. At this moment, a car drove up on a winding mountain road in the distance, and its headlights stood out in the dark night. 3 people got out of the car, an old Taoist priest, a young monk, and Cornelia Hood. Jacob took me to the side to see what the hell they were up to. Cornelia Hood stared at me hatefully, her eyes as cold and grim as a viper. Vanessa Buckle, why do you die to make me uneasy? Over the years, your parents have kept saying that they treat me as their own daughter, but I am only willing to marry a car when I get married, and I can't even afford a house. Bah, hypocrisy. Douglas Felton's house is full of pictures of you, and he just uses me as your stand-in. Except that I don't have any money without you. Where can I compare to you? Did you know that I met Douglas Felton first? I fell in love with him first. You've just lost your life, but I've lost my love. I've lived for more than 20 years, and I've never seen anyone so brazen. Jacob looked at Cornelia Hood dumbfounded, stunned by her words. After reacting, he slapped me on the back of the head. Vanessa Buckle, what kind of vision do you have? What kind of friends do you make? I'm a little weak-hearted. Cornelia Hood liked Aunt Cheong Yao the most before, and I couldn't help but cry for the heroine in it. Empathy, I should have thought of it. After the roar, Cornelia Hood began to speak. You too do it, even if she is a ghost. I want her to be gone, and if things are done well, the money can be added. The old Taoist priest and the young monk were obviously also shocked by what she had just said, especially the young round-faced monk, who kept muttering, "Is this the preciousness of life, and the value of love higher? Immeasurable heavenly venerable Tilda." The thin old Taoist priest with a goatee touched his beard, waved the dust in his hand, and was the first to react. I saw him take 4 square steps, and begin to chant incantations aloud from his mouth, circling my grave in a rapid circle. Finally he squatted on his horse, palmed his left hand in front of his chest, and raised a yellow gourd in his right hand, and shouted at my tombstone, "That's it. Recite a Tao Te Ching to catch ghosts." Jacob and I sensed that the ghost was being insulted at the same time. Jacob's hand snapped into a few marks, his fingers flapping and snapping out of the afterimage. I looked at him with admiration. He was worthy of the former little prince of rap, and he had an innate advantage. Go! With a clear cry from Jacob, The cemetery was suddenly filled with sand and rocks, and the wind raged, with the leaves flying everywhere. Countless snakes, insects, rats and ants came out from all directions, and quickly crawled towards the three Cornelia Hood. When the wind passed, the three of them opened their eyes, and lowered their face-shielding arms, and there were already 2 snakes wrapped around Cornelia Hood's ankles, a mouse crouching on her instep, and 2 palm-length black centipedes lying on her calves. It's early autumn, and Cornelia Hood has always been mindful of her personal appearance, wearing a knee-length blue dress and a thin white sweater cardigan, which looks gentle and moving. So without the cover of pants, these mice, centipedes, and snakes came into close contact with her very directly. The scene erupted in a terrible human scream, and an even more terrible ghost scream. I jumped on Cur Jacob's back with a whoosh, grimacing and screaming like a soprano. Dark, fat rats are slippery and cold and tangled, colorful snakes large and small. There are also those centipedes with a hard shell glowing and densely packed, the largest of which are even half a meter long. One look at this scene, I can die on the spot. Cur Jacob flew up to the tree on his back with me. All right, stop screaming. Those things can't touch you again. I'm scared to be like this, let alone Cornelia Hood standing in the center of the storm. I saw her screaming frantically while shaking her legs desperately, trying to throw the things out of her feet. She was wearing stiletto heels, and under this violent beating, I saw her foot bounce, and the whole person rushed to the ground. After Cornelia Hood threw herself on the ground, the rat and snake quickly jumped on her back, and a few centipedes crawled on her face. I couldn't bear to watch it, but luckily I was dead, otherwise I would have nightmares every day. This scene was really terrible. The Taoist priest and the monk were worthy of practice, and the 2 of them had already jumped on the tombstone on the side, standing on the nearby tombstone with a white face and trembling, shaking like 2 quails messy in the wind. So poor Cornelia Hood was left alone on the ground, lying on her back, covered with snakes, insects, rats and ants, weak and helpless. At this moment, 2 white lights flashed on the winding mountain road not far away. Is this someone going up the mountain again? Who is it? Idle, someone's coming. I jumped out of Cur Jacob and stood trembling on a branch, holding Cur Jacob's arm and refusing to let go. Cur Jacob waved his hand, and the bugs receded like a tidal wave, as if the horrific scene was just a hallucination. Oh, and there are also the corpses of a few small centipedes left on the ground, which were crushed to death by the Cornelia Hood when it tumbled. The monk and the Taoist priest still stood motionless on the tombstone, like 2 statues. The car stopped and I craned my neck to see only 2 tall figures in the hazy darkness of the night. Cornelia Hood. What's wrong with you, Cornelia Hood? It turned out to be Douglas Felton and a young Taoist priest. Douglas Felton was shocked to see Cornelia Hood lying on the ground, and rushed over to hold Cornelia Hood in his arms with a worried expression. Just then, Cornelia Hood woke up, and the moment she saw Douglas Felton, she couldn't help but put her hands around his neck and cried. The 2 statues on the tombstone finally came to life, and the young monk jumped to the ground and scratched his bald head in embarrassment. The old Taoist priest was thick-skinned, shook off the dust, and said to Cornelia Hood, "Don't be afraid, girl. Those monsters have been driven away by the old way." Douglas Felton's body stiffened for a moment, and he let go of the Cornelia Hood, and looked at the old Taoist priest suspiciously. "Monster? What monster?" Cornelia Hood glanced at the old Taoist priest, and said in a choked voice, "During the day, I saw that Vanessa Buckle's tombstone was a mess, and I specially called 2 masters to give Vanessa Buckle a little more time, wanting her to walk at ease, and as a result, woo Tilda, looking at Cornelia Hood, who was crying with pear blossoms and rain. Douglas Felton was a little distressed. "Cornelia Hood, what's wrong?" At this time, there was another roar of cars at the gate of the cemetery. "Is this someone going up the mountain again?" Mom, this midnight is more lively than the new year. Sister Cornelia Hood, Douglas Felton, why are you here? My brother took an old monk with him, and Cornelia Hood and Douglas Felton stared at each other. 2 Taoist priests, 2 monks, 2 young and 2 old men, just enough to make up a table of mahjong. Everyone looked at each other for a moment, but it was Douglas Felton who broke the silence first. Cornelia Hood and I are here to give Vanessa Buckle an override. My brother was upset, frowning and grimacing. What's the excess? My sister is obviously unjustly dying. She should summon a spirit. When I see him later, I'll have to ask her who bullied her. Your brother has a bit of a brain. Ker Jacob clasped his hands over his chest and stood on a branch watching the Taoist priest my brother had invited over there doing his work in a decent manner. I tugged at his sleeve. Can't I just show up? Find a way for them to see me? Ker Jacob shook his head. People and ghosts have different paths. It's not so easy for you to face your family face to face. According to your current ghost body, if you talk to people for a minute, you will be killed by the yang energy on their bodies. Wait a little longer. You first carefully follow the cultivation in that book. Ker Jacob touched me soothingly, nodded his head, and comforted me softly. It suddenly occurred to me that there was nothing wrong with being a ghost, and that I wouldn't even see Ker Jacob in person while I was alive. Looking at the idols close at hand, my ghost life appeared happy for the first time. The young Taoist priest shouted, and the scene was as quiet as a chicken. After the identification, the 4 people present here are all liars. Virgil Buckle, Douglas Felton, let's go back first. Today is too rushed. I don't think the masters are ready. Let's go back and discuss it, so that the masters can be a little more prepared. Cornelia Hood spoke softly, breaking the awkward atmosphere. As they had come, the 3 groups hurried away again, leaving me disappointed and Ker Jacob. That's it. Ker Jacob pinched my face. Stop watching the show. Hurry up and cultivate. The process of cultivation was boring, and Ker Jacob became the strictest teacher, and as soon as I was distracted, he whipped me with a thin stick in his hand. Ghosts don't have to sleep. They don't get sleepy. They don't get tired. So I was forced to practice all night until the east turned white and the sun rose slightly. I should have some talent in cultivation, and after a whole night of hard work, one of my fingers has been able to condense and form. Ker Jacob said that this finger can already touch everything in the human world, and after 3 days of cultivation, it will be able to manifest in front of people. During the day, the yang energy in the air was too heavy for cultivation, and Ker Jacob went to play chess with the uncle in the northwest corner of the cemetery. So I hid in a tree and was lazy. Unexpectedly, Cornelia Hood came again, this time with 2 Taoist priests, 1 big and 1 small. Last time, the Taoist priest was wearing a yellow robe. This time he was dressed in a plain blue dress. The old Taoist priest's face was thin, but a pair of eyes were shining, and the moment he looked at me on the tree, I suddenly felt a palpitation. Master, this is that classmate of mine. After she died, her boyfriend fell in love with me, and because of this, she began to take revenge on us like crazy, and almost killed us several times. Please help us, and help my classmates. She was a very kind person when she was alive, and she must be in pain after doing so many evil things. Cornelia Hood's eyes were red, her face was poignant, and her voice was choked. Vanessa Buckle, I know you don't like me being with Douglas Felton, but you're gone, and you have to live. You live. What kind of bullshit is she playing? Why do you slander a ghost like that? I jumped down from the tree angrily, trying out the 1 yang finger I had practiced last night on Cornelia Hood. I saw the old Taoist priest take out a thin wicker from his bosom and wave it at me. Death to iniquity. The wicker was pumped on my body, and I only felt as if I had been burned by fire, and this pain hit my soul directly, and in an instant the pain made me delirious, and my consciousness began to blur. The old Taoist priest seemed to be able to see me, and he whipped the wicker in his hand wherever I hid. And after being whipped 3 times like this, I could clearly feel that my body had become blurred. I'm dying. Vanessa, buckle. Run. At the critical moment, Kerr Jacob rushed over. And helpers. It's actually a ghost cultivator, a disciple, and a formation arrangement. The old Taoist priest confronted Kerr Jacob, and the scene was instantly cloudy and windy, blowing so that people couldn't open their eyes. I stumbled and ran out, my heart filled with devastating hatred. When he was alive, he died because of Cornelia Hood, but he didn't expect to die and be killed by her again. The clear sky just now turned cloudy, and I frantically hit the transparent barrier, but I couldn't get out. The palpitations were getting stronger, and my instincts told me that if I waited for the little Taoist priest to finish the formation, Kerr Jacob and I would be finished. Just then, Kerr Jacob got rid of the old Taoist priest and ran towards me. Vanessa, buckle. I'll take you away. Confused, Kerr Jacob lowered his head and kissed me. There is a bead in my mouth, warm and fragrant, containing infinite energy. I can feel like I've recovered a lot from my injuries, and my body doesn't hurt as much. We're out. The moment the lips met, the barrier was gone. Kerr Jacob and I were hiding in a black umbrella, and he seemed to be injured quite a bit. His lips were pale, and his face was even covered with fine lines, like a delicate porcelain doll about to crack. Vanessa, buckle. You have the ghost pill running in your body for 3 weeks, which can help you heal. I did what Kerr Jacob said, and sure enough, I felt a lot better. All right, now return the ghost pill to me. Give it back to him. How to return? I didn't think much of it when the situation was urgent, but now I can't help but feel a little dizzy when I see Kerr Jacob's handsome face close at hand. I'm going to kiss my idol who has been a fan for 10 years. Oh, my God. I didn't dare to do this in my dreams, for fear of being scolded to death by my wife fans. If it weren't for the wrong timing, I'd have wanted to laugh out loud. Kerr Jacob frowned as he looked at my changing face. A strong palm pressed against the back of my head, and pressed my lips against Kerr Jacob's. The honey pill returned to Kerr Jacob's body. I felt like a deflated ball, and the state of being full of strength was gone all at once. I stayed up with Kerr Jacob in an umbrella until it was dark, and I took Kerr Jacob straight to my house. Mom and Dad didn't seem to be at home, and only my brother was in the room and didn't know what to do. As soon as Kerr Jacob and I entered my brother's house, we were shocked. He didn't turn on the lights at night, and the originally bright and warm bedroom was made like a dojo by him. There was a 1-man tall spirit banner by the window, and on the desk was a piece of my wooden tablet, in front of which there were 3 sticks of incense. My brother covered his bed with things from my life, my favorite dress, my bracelet, my favorite book, and in the middle of the bed is a huge poster of Kerr Jacob. My brother held a large bell in his hand, and shook it at my tablet. Vanessa buckle ~soul returns ~. This idiot, I sniffed. He used to be the most afraid of ghosts, a young man who was almost 20 years old, and he didn't dare to turn off the lights when he slept. I shuddered when I watched a horror movie, and going to a haunted house to play could scare him half his life on the spot. My most timid brother is now alone in a dark house, conjuring spirits to my relics. I don't know what I thought. He suddenly slapped the top of his head and shoulder 3 times, and when he was finished, he didn't seem to be satisfied, and then put his hand into the basin on the table and soaked it, and slapped it again. Kerr Jacob looked at my brother with a question mark on his face. What is he doing? I looked at my silly brother with red eyes. When we were children, we heard my grandfather tell ghost stories, and he said that there were 3 fires on people's heads and shoulders, and that fire could protect people from ghosts. Therefore, you can't pat people on the shoulder in the middle of the night, and when you put out the fire on people's shoulders, the demons will follow. He's slapping his own 3 fires. My brother shouted for a long time, but there was no reaction in the room. He crouched on the ground in frustration, buried his face between his hands, and faintly whimpered like a puppy between his fingers. My heart was sour and astringent. My brother was more than 1 meter tall and squatting on the ground, tall and big. But I seemed to see him when I was a child, the little one, who follows my ass all day long. And the elder sister shouts shortly. My little boy grew up. Jacob, probably thinking of his family, couldn't help but redden. He rubbed my hair, and his clear voice had a hint of crying. What are you doing? Don't use your finger on the computer yet. I froze, then rushed to my brother's computer desk in ecstasy. Yes, I can only use one finger, but I can type. In the quiet room, only the keyboard crackled and pulsed, typing like a pair of invisible hands on it. I was injured in the afternoon, and I couldn't see my fingers, so I could barely touch the keyboard. My brother looked up suspiciously, then screamed and jumped onto the table. Hell, Virgil Buckle, don't be afraid, it's my sister, I'm back to see you. My brother's eyesight has been good since he was a child, and I turned the font to the maximum so he can clearly see the words flashing word by word on the screen. Sister, is that you? Is it really you? My brother's trembling voice was full of anticipation and disbelief. After confirming that it was really me, my brother rushed over and hugged the computer chair and cried, "Go farther." The fire on your body almost swept away my soul. My brother sobbed and stepped back. Sister, why are you still so useless, when you are a ghost? This little bunny. One person and one ghost are communicating with each other on the computer. Otherwise, how to say that science and technology are the primary productive forces? One finger can't write, but you can hit the keyboard and fly. When he saw that it was Cornelia Hood who had killed me, my brother jumped up from the ground with a pop, and the flames on his body, that had been quelled, rose to a height of 2 meters, almost burning me again. I'm going to kill her now. With that, he snatched the door out, leaving the computer screen and me behind his ass. This fool, idle, what should I do? I anxiously followed him, but I didn't dare reach out to touch him. Jacob was also worried. He had been seriously injured in the afternoon, and he had not recovered yet, so he could not stop my brother. The two of us could only stare at my brother as he ran into the Douglas Felton neighborhood. Cornelia Hood, you slut, come out of here. My brother banged on Douglas Felton's door, and soon Douglas Felton opened the door and looked at my brother in disbelief. Virgil Buckle, what are you crazy about? My brother pulled Douglas Felton away and slapped Cornelia Hood as he heard the noise. Cornelia Hood was knocked to the ground, turned around and fell to the ground. She sat on the ground and covered her face, and looked at my brother in disbelief. Virgil Buckle, you're hitting me. Douglas Felton hugged my brother's waist, and he was still struggling frantically. Cornelia Hood, how can there be such a disgusting woman in the world? Killed my sister and pretended to be innocent, and robbed my sister's boyfriend. My parents also prepared a dowry for you. Damn, how do you have the face to live in the world? Lao Tzu must kill you today to avenge my sister. I jumped on the side. I thought he had grown up, but I didn't expect this dog's temper to change at all. Virgil Buckle, calm down. Douglas Felton, who was also angry when he saw Cornelia Hood being beaten, pushed my brother away and stretched out his hands to protect Cornelia Hood behind him. Have you listened to some lies? Cornelia Hood is the kindest girl in the world, and she would never hurt Vanessa Buckle. My sister told me herself. It was Cornelia Hood who was violated by thieves that day. She opened the door to save Cornelia Hood, but Cornelia Hood ran into the room and locked the door, and my sister died. She's the murderer. Douglas Felton looked at my brother in shock. His lips murmured for a long time, and finally he trembled and uttered a few words. I don't believe it. It can't be. Yes, Vanessa Buckle is dead. How did she tell you? At this time, Cornelia Hood also came to her senses and cried to my brother, Virgil Buckle, who are you listening to? You're going to kill me. Vanessa Buckle is my best friend. How could I possibly kill her? Virgil buckle. Why do you believe that others don't believe me? I'm so sad that you're like this. I stroked my forehead and looked at everything in front of me. What was this? My brother is such a fool. He is so impulsive. It completely disrupts my plans. What about the good shoo tizzy? Hey, I finally know why you're stupid. It's not your fault. It's genetic. Jacob sighed and put his hand on my shoulder. This woman is ruthless. Your brother has scared the snake now. I don't know what she will do next. The commotion was so loud that the residents on the opposite side called the police. All three of my brothers were taken to the police station, and an old policeman looked at my brother with a dissatisfied face. Even according to what you said, she is not a murderer. She is a victim. For the sake of this little girl, you can sign a mediation agreement. Otherwise, according to your slap, you will definitely be detained. My brother let out a sneer. Victims. My sister is dead. Why is she, the victim, alive? Hearing this, Douglas Felton clenched his fists and stood up. Virgil buckle. Are you enough? Your sister is dead, and she's been dead for 3 years. She's gone, and we still have to live our lives. Why are you venting your anger on Cornelia Hood? She's actually felt more sad than anyone else for so many years. You know, Cornelia Hood was half leaning on top of Douglas Felton, looking like she was crying so hard that she couldn't stop crying. Virgil buckle. It's worse for you to misunderstand me like this than for me to die. Virgil buckle. Who have you been fooled by? I finally couldn't bear it anymore, and shouted angrily. Virgil buckle. Get me home. My brother was shaken and had a look of disbelief on his face, and after a moment large tears rolled down his face, and he wiped his face twice and ran towards the door. Jacob looked at me in surprise. Vanessa buckle. You're a genius. It's time to communicate yin and yang. I looked at him in confusion. What communicates yin and yang? Just now, I was very anxious and worried. And then I thought of the cultivation methods in the books, and put all my attention on my brother. Silly girl, you can talk to your brother and parents. Jacob rubbed my hair happily, his eyes full of pampering. He should be the most popular idol in the world. In the living room, my brother pressed my parents on the couch, and stood aside with his conjuring banner from the bedroom. Then I got my hands covered in water and quickly slapped my parents on the head 3 times. After this set of actions, he slapped his head again, rushed and turned off all the lights. My parents sat in the room in the dark with a confused face. What are you crazy about, stinky boy? Mom and Dad, I summoned my sister back. Recruit your mother's head. I think you are. My dad slapped my brother on the head, and before he finished scolding, I couldn't help it. Dad, Mom, it's me. Your girl is back. In the dark, I could clearly see my parents' stiff figures. Hello, is that you? My mom's trembling voice was distinctly crying, and her petite body was shaking violently, as if trying to control her emotions. Vanessa buckle. Is my Vanessa buckle back? My dad's lips trembled for a long time, before he could blur a few syllables, and he gasped violently, his hands on his chest shaking uncontrollably. Woo woo tilde. Jacob covered his mouth and cried louder than I could. What? My dad jumped out of his chair, and turned around to rush out the door to settle accounts with Cornelia Hood. Hey, Dad, calm down. My brother and my mom were desperately holding his waist. Sure enough, personality is all genetic. After persuading for a long time, my dad sat down in the chair and panted violently, his face flushed. This can't just be left at that. Vanessa buckle can't die in vain. The family sat on the couch and discussed, arguing and laughing, just as I had when I was alive. It's nice to be able to live like this after I'm dead. It's like a dream. It's all thanks to Jacob. Jacob winked lightly at my grateful look. The long eyelashes were like the wings of a butterfly, fanning a ripple on the lake of my heart. Early the next morning, an unexpected visitor came to the house. Cornelia Hood came to my house with a young man in a suit. uncle and aunt. This is the sales manager of the Mercedes-Benz store. We met last time. The young man was a passionate rainbow fart at my parents, and after blowing, he finally got to the point. Mr. Buckle, Mrs. Buckle, didn't you say you were going to buy an S450 last week? I was supposed to pick up the car this morning, but I saw that you never came, and no one answered the phone, so I came to ask about it. My dad patted his head, and he forgot about it. One morning, in order to let Jacob and I live at home with peace of mind, he went to the lumber market and bought a lot of locust wood, which is very cloudy and perfect for ghosts to stay on. Jacob and I looked at Cornelia Hood in amazement. Sure enough, she is invincible in the world, and she didn't forget to come to the door to ask for a car. I'm sorry, we don't want that car. Cornelia Hood was in a hurry. Uncle and aunt, didn't you say that this was a dowry for me? TSK. My brother rolled his eyes. Cornelia Hood, I've never seen such a shameless woman as you. I don't want you to say that. Cornelia Hood. Douglas Felton hurried to the scene, holding the red-eyed Cornelia Hood in his arms. Vanessa Buckle and I are already in the past tense. Whether you accept it or not, I will marry Cornelia Hood. Cornelia Hood. She is the kindest and gentlest girl I've ever met, and I'm sad that Vanessa Buckle is gone. But what is it that you take your anger on the innocent Cornelia Hood? Jacob, who was hiding in the shadows on the side, patted me on the head. TSK. It's not good to find a boyfriend or a friend. In the end, Cornelia Hood and Douglas Felton were kicked out by my mom with a broom. The sales manager stood aside excitedly to watch the play. The car was not sold. The play was watched for a long time, and he could gossip with his colleagues when he went back. And this wave was not a loss. Jacob and I stayed at my house with peace of mind. My dad had a lot of money, bought the most expensive and best spices, and hired 2 people to burn incense from morning to night, 1 day shift and 1 night shift. As for those things that nourish yin and raise ghosts, I bought them regardless of the cost, and I wish I could become a ghost king in 1 day. With the offering of countless incense candles, Jacob and I cultivated quickly, and within a few days we were able to recover from our injuries. Cornelia Hood finally couldn't help it after a few days of silence and sent a message to my brother. She said that she knew that my ghost had appeared, and that she wanted to meet me, and apologized to me seriously. Sister, there must be fraud. I remembered that the old Taoist priest still had palpitations. Cornelia Hood was so small-minded. It was clear that he wanted revenge. It's okay, we'll do it. In the evening, Jacob and my brother and I went to a large abandoned factory in the development area. Cornelia Hood stood there alone, looking at my brother pitifully. Virgil Buckle, is your sister here? Can I talk to your sister? After a period of cultivation, I was already able to show a faint outline. Cornelia Hood, what are you going to tell me? Cornelia Hood shook her whole body and raised her head with an eerie smile. Vanessa Buckle, I didn't expect you to be so stupid when you died. You really dare to come. My brother looked nervous in front of me. Damn, Cornelia Hood, what do you mean? Don't worry, Virgil Buckle, I won't do anything to you. It's a crime to kill, but killing ghosts is different, and the police can't control it. Master Zhang, come out. Cornelia Hood clapped her hands, and sure enough, 2 figures came out of the dark corner. It was the old Taoist priest and his apprentice, who had appeared in the cemetery last time. Cornelia Hood, you wicked woman, where am I sorry for you, and you won't let me go even if you're a ghost? I yelled at Cornelia Hood. Ha ha ha, laugh at me, Vanessa Buckle, you don't think you're treating me right. Don't think I don't know. You pay my tuition, buy me clothes, buy snacks, all because you look down on me. Why are they all from the village? Your parents make money to buy a villa, and my parents have to work for the rest of their lives. My mom made money from sweeping the streets for a month, and you bought a dress and it was gone. Didn't you just use me to set you off when you were friends with me? Woo. Hypocrisy. Disgusting. You use my dignity to satisfy your vanity. You don't really think you're kind, do you? Ha ha ha, laughed to death. My brother was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. Cornelia Hood, there's something wrong with you. My sister died to save you. Cornelia Hood's lifelong resentment and dissatisfaction seemed to be released at this moment. She turned to my brother and roared, "It's her own stupidity. That thief didn't want to kill at all. She just took advantage of it, and if she hadn't rushed out to beat that thief, she wouldn't have died herself. I hid back in my room to protect myself. She was the one who angered the thief and almost killed us. If I hadn't been able to hide quickly, I would have been hacked to death by thieves. This is a bad spirit. You almost killed me, and you dare to say that you saved me?" My brother was so angry that he couldn't speak, and stretched out his finger over there for a long time. "Cornelia Hood, you're being violated by that thief without me." Cornelia Hood glared in my direction, her eyes looking like poison. "Phew, it's better to be violated than to die." Vanessa Buckle, you self-righteous idiot. When you are a human being, you are stupid, and you are just as stupid when you are a ghost. Master Zhang, what are you waiting for? Do it. I want her to be gone, never be born beyond. The old Taoist priest made a move. It turned out that he had already arranged a formation in the factory, and I saw him insert a flagpole on the ground, and the temperature in the whole room rose sharply. Virgil Buckle, do it. At this moment, dozens of people rushed in at the door, accompanied by a very pungent stench. Smack! The flagpole was splashed with a large pool of dung. My demon-slaying dust, my 100-year-old peachwood sword, my 5 emperor money. The old Taoist priest's terrible screams sounded in the room. "I've fought with you. 2 fists are hard to beat 4 hands." Although the old Taoist priest has a little skill, but after all, he is old, and the people called by my brother are all half-sized men in their 20s, and some have strength. Dung water is the most filthy, and no matter how powerful the magic weapon is poured with dung water, it will immediately lose all its mana and become a vulgar thing. I floated into the air in disgust, and the smell of septic tanks filled the air. Idle. This trick is good. It's just too dirty. Cornelia Hood sat stupidly on the ground, buckets of thrown on her. The expected war between humans and ghosts has not yet begun, and it is over. The old Taoist priest was not too dirty, and pulled Cornelia Hood's clothes and shouted desperately, "You pay for my magic weapon. These are all my ancestral magic weapons. It's ruined. It's all ruined." When the farce was over, Cornelia Hood fell silent. Her reliance is gone, and I heard that she lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to that Taoist priest, and almost hollowed out Douglas Felton's family. I don't know how she explained to Douglas Felton. The wedding was still held as promised, and it was true love. On our wedding day, Kerr Jacob and I wore a locust necklace around my brother's neck, and today I'm going to give Cornelia Hood a big gift. The wedding was a big one, with friends and family from Cornelia Hood and Douglas Felton coming, and I saw a lot of old acquaintances. Cornelia Hood and I have been best friends for so many years, and there are many overlaps in our social circles. Several of my classmates, who came to the wedding, were my good friends. I can say that there are very few people here who don't know me. Hey, let's be quiet. You can see that our handsome groom is already standing on the stage, waiting for his beautiful bride. As soon as the master of ceremonies finished speaking, the audience was silent, and at this moment, the big screen in the center of the stage lit up. Cornelia Hood's angry roar was heard clearly. "Ha ha ha, laugh at me, Vanessa Buckle. You don't think you're treating me right. Don't think I don't know. You pay my tuition, buy me clothes, buy snacks, all because you look down on me." My brother was wearing high-definition night vision cameras all over his body that day, and we asked professional personnel to edit this video, so Cornelia Hood's face appeared very clearly on the big screen, and those words were all broadcast word for word. After the video ended, There was still silence, and everyone looked at the screen in shock, not knowing what was happening. My brother stepped onto the stage and took the microphone from the master of ceremonies. Hey, I'm sure everyone knows me. I'm Vanessa Buckle's brother, Virgil Buckle. Today, I would like to use Cornelia Hood's wedding to clarify one thing with you. 3 years ago, the day my sister died, Cornelia Hood went to the toilet in the middle of the night and met a thief. My sister heard the commotion and ran out of the room to save her. While my sister and the thief were scuffling, Cornelia Hood ran into her room and locked the door, killing my sister by the thief. Okay, that's the way it is. I wish you all a happy wedding, and we can enjoy the video a few more times. The audience was in an uproar. Didn't Cornelia Hood say she saved Vanessa Buckle? Damn, Cornelia Hood is too shameless. What? Cornelia Hood's mom sweeps the streets. Isn't her mother a civil servant? Cornelia Hood was a show-off person, and after I died, she repeatedly told her classmates and friends how she saved me, how she found me dying, and how she scared away the thief. In short, he has created an image of himself as brave, kind, strong, and intelligent. How successful the original shaping is, how serious the backlash is now. Douglas Felton's mother rolled her eyes and fainted. Everyone was talking so loudly that it almost topped the roof. The image of Cornelia Hood, which has been painstakingly operated for many years, is in ashes at this moment, lost in disrepute. That's what I said. My revenge is over, and Kerr Jacob is going to be reincarnated. There are many ghosts in the underworld, and the current fertility rate in the world is very low, so it is difficult to reincarnate, and some ghosts have waited for decades and cannot be reincarnated. Kerr Jacob and I stood at my tombstone, and that's where we met. What are you crying about? Kerr Jacob rubbed my head as usual. After I'm gone, you still have to cultivate well, so as not to be bullied by other powerful ghosts. There are many masters of magic in the world. You try not to run around, and be careful which Taoist priest takes you into. Remember to deal with the Anya, and let them leave you a better place to reincarnate when the time comes. Go back. The ghost will come to my grave to look for me later. Don't come to see me off. I don't like this scene. I threw myself into Kerr Jacob's arms, and hugged his waist and cried breathlessly. Kerr Jacob is the best idol in the world and my most brilliant youth. All right, good. Let's go home. A gust of wind blew, and Kerr Jacob vanished. I kept my hands around in a daze, my heart throbbing. Sister, are you smiling? Now I'm visible. My brother looked at me, and tried desperately to amuse me. Douglas Felton and Cornelia Hood are out of their marriage. Cornelia Hood's job is gone, and now everyone is talking about her. It turns out that she is so good at bragging, telling others that her mother is a civil servant and her father is a banker. I heard that Douglas Felton didn't agree to get out of the marriage, and almost broke off his parents. And then his father said that if he continued to be with Cornelia Hood, he would cancel Douglas Felton's inheritance, and he broke up. Why didn't you respond? Aren't you happy to get revenge? I buried my head in my knees and ignored him. Oops, who's going to hit me? I looked up and looked at a very bright smile. It's useless. It's not like my fan at all. Kerr Jacob stood there, a smile on the corner of his eyebrow. I gave up the reincarnation quota to others, and now, like you, I have to queue up again. He looked at me with his hands outstretched and raised an eyebrow. I jumped up and rushed over and plunged headlong into his arms. The end.